Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Vaeschanan. And Parshas Vaeschanan, although on one hand heartbreaking, because it records Moshe Rabbeinu's last attempt to try to enter into the land, also for us takes on a different emotional experience, as Parshas Vaeschanan is Shabbos Nachamu, the Shabbos of consolation, echoing the words of the Haftorah, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Be consoled, my nation. The Shabbos that comes after Tisha B'Av. And after we experience the searing pain, after we experience the heartbreak of Tisha B'Av, we come to the Shabbos of consolation and we remember that as much pain as there is, or as there has been in our past, and even as much pain as there is in our present, there is a beautiful, magnificent, and simchadik future which awaits us. For this Shabbos is also unique. For this Shabbos is Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av. And the Gemara records that Tu B'Av was a tremendous Yom Tov. And the Gemara explains that there were many different reasons why Tu B'Av was considered to be a holiday, considered to be festive in nature. But interestingly enough, one of the reasons the Gemara brings down was it was Yom Shnitnu Bo Haruge Beisar L'Kvura. It was the days in which those who were murdered in the city of Beitar were finally allowed to be buried. So a little bit of historical context. Beitar was the site of the last vestige of the Bar Kokhba rebellion against the Romans. And the city of Beitar held out for as long as they could. And again, they were a symbol of hope, a symbol of courage. This was when there was the thought that Bar Kokhba himself was the Mashiach. Bar Kokhba was going to usher in a period of messianic redemption. But alas, Beitar fell. And the Romans swooped in with incredible fury. And they not only murdered the residents of Beitar, but they prevented the remaining citizens of Beitar from burying their dead. Well, some amount of time later, on the 15th of Av, so again, the Romans allowed the Jewish residents of Beitar to bury their dead. Now, interestingly enough, the Gemara says this occurred on Tu B'Av. As such, there's a joyous element to this day, for we're finally allowed to bury our dead. What's interesting to note is this event of allowing us to bury our dead in Beitar was actually kind of concretized or solidified by the rabbis in a very meaningful way. In the fourth Brah of Birchas Hamazon, the fourth Brah of benching. So remember again, we say Uvenei Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh Hem B'Yameinu. We ask the Kodesh Baruch Hu to rebuild Yerushalayim. Baruch Ato Hashem Bonei Baracham of Yerushalayim. Amen. Hashem, you are the one who rebuilds Yerushalayim in compassion. We have a fourth bracha. This is the bracha of Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hakel Avinu Malkeinu Adirenu Boreleinu Golinu Yotzenu Hamelech Hatov V'Hametiv Lakol. The king who is good and ultimately again bestows good upon. So the bracha of what we call Tov V'Hametiv, the bracha, this fourth bracha in benching. And the Gemara explains to us that this bracha was actually created to remember the events of Beitar. Ultimately, again, Hatov, that he allowed us to bury our dead. Hametiv, that the dead did not decompose during this time that they remained unburied. So we see that this event of Beitar, the massacre of Beitar, the miracle that the dead did not decompose, and then the further miracle that we were allowed to bury them, is recorded for all future in the bracha of benching. Incredible, fourth bracha of benching. I saw something so incredibly beautiful. Ramelech Birman, in his Be'er HaParsha, says something magnificent. He says, I don't understand. He says, okay, let's accept the fact that this occurred on Tu B'Av and this was a tremendous miracle. But there are so many miracles that happened to our people. Why did the rabbis choose to go ahead and record this miracle for all Jewish future in benching? Right? Every single time we bench, we make mention of this miracle in Beitar. But why? It's almost like this miracle is part of our daily lives. Why memorialize it in such a dramatic way? Especially given the fact that as miraculous as it is, it's a miracle born in tragedy. Beitar was massacred. The Romans did not allow us to bury our dead. A miracle occurred. The dead did not decompose. And then again, some amount of time later on Tu B'Av, the Romans finally allowed us to bury our dead. It's incredible. But it's not a joyous miracle. It's not a happy miracle. And not only is it remembered, not only is it recorded, but it's recorded forever in benching. It becomes part of Birkas Hamazon, the fourth bracha of benching. Hatov V'Hametiv is literally dedicated to this miracle. Why? And Amelech B'Ramin says something so incredibly beautiful. Because Chazal were trying to teach us a very important lesson. You see, it's easy to see the beauty in happy miracles. It's easy to see, right? Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the Red Sea, absolutely incredible. Chanukah, absolutely incredible. Even Purim, absolutely incredible, because if you think about it, to a certain degree, those are miracles that were kind of enveloped in simcha. But the avoda of the Jew is to recognize that there is beautiful, dynamic, miraculous activity, that there is divine salvation even in the midst of heartbreak. Do not wait for the simchas of life to see the hand of God. But even in the midst of tragedy, even in the midst of profound sadness, there is beautiful, miraculous salvation. There are sparks of simcha all around us. The miracle of Beitar shows us to look for the happiness, to look for the beauty, to look for the miraculous salvation, and to look for the good, even in the midst of dramatic heartbreak. So Chazal felt that this Yesod was so strong that they literally again solidified this, they memorialized this for all eternity in Birchas Hamazon and benching. So every single time a Yid benches, every single time we recite Birchas Hamazon, and we get to that fourth bracha, right after Uvnei Yerushalayim, we say, Atov Ametiv Hashem, you are good. How do we know that you're good? Because you did not allow the dead of Beitar to decompose. Because ultimately, although it took a while, you allowed us to bring those precious neshamos to Kvuras Yisrael, to beautiful Jewish burial. Because the power of the Jew is the ability to see miraculous salvation, not only in the midst of incredible success and victory, but it's the ability to see the sparks of simcha, the sparks of salvation, the sparks of good, the sparks of the divine, even in the midst of heartbreaking situations. Because, dear friends, there is simcha everywhere. Sometimes simcha is overt. Sometimes simcha, joy and happiness, is apparent and obvious. And other times you have to look for it. But it's always there. And the rabbis were conditioning us, Chazal were conditioning us through this fourth bracha of Birkas Hamazon to be the kind of people who look for good. Sometimes good kind of like smacks you in the face and you see it and you can't ignore it. And sometimes life is so wonderful and so beautiful and so overwhelmingly good that you can't escape the bracha. But dear friends, more often than not, life is not like that. More often than not, life is challenging and life is difficult. And life has its overwhelming circumstances, but even then there's good. But you have to force yourself to see it. You have to condition yourself to see it. And the whole Yesod, the whole Avodah, the whole message of the fourth bracha of benching of Atov Ametiv is exactly this. Train yourself to see the good even in the midst of adversity. Train yourself to see the beauty, even when the good may not be as apparent, even when the victory and the salvation is not as obvious. It's there. It's there. You just have to look for it, just like in Beitar. Just like in Beitar. Can you imagine that day on Tu B'Av? They were burying their dead. So even on that day when they were burying their dead, such heartbreak. You have to see the good. The bodies didn't decompose. Baruch Hashem, we're finally able to bring our loved ones to Kvuras Yisrael. That is the avoda of the Jew. And that is part of the message of Tu B'Av. See the beautiful salvation of the Ribono Shel Olam. See the good, even in times that are not so good. See the simcha, even in the tzara. See the joy, sometimes even in the midst of all of the pain and all of the suffering. There are many beautiful facets to Tu B'Av that are purely simchadik, but in this respect, Chazal wanted us to see, not just on Tu B'Av, but each and every day, there's always good to be found, but you have to train yourself to see it. There's always simcha to be experienced, but you have to train yourself to perceive it. And in reality, is this not the entire message of Shabbos Nachamu? We come to Shabbos Nachamu, and it's the age-old question, right? What has changed? We had Tisha B'Av on Sunday, Motzei Shabbos, and Sunday we sat on the ground both physically and spiritually and emotionally. And now Baruch Hashem, now it's Shabbos Nachamu, now we're all happy, now it's everything Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. And it's incredible. The Navi even says, why does he say Nachamu, Nachamu? Be consoled twice. Perhaps because the Navi understood, okay, we want to be consoled, but how should we be consoled? Well, what's changed? What's changed in our world? The Beis HaMikdash is not yet here. Our hostages have not yet been redeemed from captivity. The precious neshamas whose bodies are being held have not yet had the opportunity to be brought back by their families for Kvuras Yisrael. There's so much heartbreak, there's so much difficulty, there's so much sadness. So the Navi says, Nachamu, but how should I achieve Nechama if at the end of the day it appears that nothing has changed? The Navi says, Nachamu again. Nechama is a choice. Nechama is a choice. Consolation is a choice, because you have to train yourself to see it all around us. There are beautiful things that are unfolding, but you have to train your eye to see it. All around us, there's beautiful bracha that's happening, but you have to train yourself to see it. You want nechama? You want consolation? Comfort yourself. You want consolation? Look for it. Just like you want simcha, it's always there. You just have to look for it. You see, dear friends, we have this idea in life that, what's simcha? Simcha is this state of being where everything is just overwhelmingly perfect, beautiful, physically, materially, spiritually, blissful, and it's going to be fantastic, and you can't escape it. Halavai, we should be zocha to that. But that's not life. That's not reality. Reality is often filled with hardship and difficulty, but even with all of that, there's simcha to be found. You just have to train yourself to see it. That's Tu B'Av. That's HaTov HaMeitiv. That is Beitar. Even in the midst of all the difficulty, seek out, search out, and see the good. And that's Shabbos Nachamu. What's changed? What's changed? Could be very little in the world around us has changed, but what has changed is me. And I now choose to become the kind of person who is going to look for the good, even in the most heartbreaking of circumstances. I'm going to look for the beauty. I'm going to look for the bracha in other people. I'm going to look for the beauty. I'm going to look for the bracha in life's circumstances. And yes, I do hope that one day, that day of overwhelming, magnificent, and incontrovertible bliss envelops me, envelops all of us. But until that day, I am committed to being a Tu B'Av Jew. I am committed to being a Shabbos Nachamu Jew. I am committed to being a Nachamu Jew. I'm not going to be the kind of person who is only consoled, who is only besimcha when it's obvious, apparent, and undeniable. But I'm going to be the kind of person that looks for good in every circumstance, in every situation. I'm going to be the kind of person who looks for bracha, even in the most heartbreaking of circumstances. I'm going to be the kind of person who looks for consolation, even in the most tragic of circumstances. That's the nechama. That's Tu B'Av. That's at the end of the day what the Navi tells us. You want nechama, go for it. You want Tu B'Av, at the end of the day, HaTov HaMeitiv, build it into your daily life, build it into your Birkas HaMazon. Be the kind of person who doesn't wait for nechama, for bracha, and for simcha to come to him, but be the kind of person who sees it each and every day, in the everyday life that we lead. We should be Zochem Eretz Hashem to that great day, that day of bliss, that day of simcha, that day of Mashiach, that day of Geula, where the simcha and the nechama is palpable and undeniable. But until that great day, let us find the courage to become Beitar Jews, Tu B'Av Jews, Shabbos Nachamu Jews, who look for the beauty, who look for the consolation, who look for the bracha, and who look for the simcha each and every day in all of our life occurrences. Wishing everyone a good Ner Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Nachamu.